Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode. I wanted to speak about experiential learning, and first of all, hopefully my voice is clear and there's music playing in the background. Hopefully that's audible too. So if the listeners want to let me know if something's off with the sound, you can in the chat section. Anyways, experiential learning and behaviorism. You see, behaviorism is one of the most important things to look at in anything human related. You know, we have an appreciation of the human being as a noun where it's just a picture. That means, like, you know, 5 limbs, a skeletal structure, you know, humans, the appearance of the human being. That's kind of like the noun way of understanding the human being, the human position. And then we have, through a verb, a sort of understanding of the human position. What that means is it's like pictures and films, really. And if you have a single picture, you know, it's not a film. But when you have more than one frame, and there is a transition of attention from one frame to another, from one picture of reality's meaning to another, life becomes a sort of film. So in some sense, our behaviorism has to do with how we are an actor in our own first personal universe and then the impersonal universe. You know, every person has a personal and impersonal dimension to their intelligence. Right now, I am, let's say, I'll say it like this. My personal dimension is all my memories and everything before I speak. My impersonal dimension is what is shared from that personal dimension to a state where things all arrive at, you know. So something, I don't know how to say it, but I guess poetically it's like ideas are traveling from our inner realms, from the inner realms of every person towards one common outer realm. You know, when we look at the concept of learning, you know, it's as if something is already here before we are born, and we are learning it, we're becoming acquainted with it. You know, I remember in my youth, when I was living in Iran for some time, when I was really young. I have a twin brother. I remember my father took me and my twin brother to this bazaar, you know, this market in Iran. And Iran has like next level marketplaces, you know. You sometimes see it in maybe footage of India, for example. There's a spice market, you know, where they sell different spices. It's as if, like, you know, it's like 100 stores all in like one street alley. Do you know what I mean? One long street alley. So my father, he didn't take me and my twin brother to a spice market, but he took us to in Iran. They because Iran is a religious country, there is religious products. So what that means is that there is, in some sense, like rings with religious sayings on it, you know. They find ancient stones. It's like when a country becomes ideologically inhibited, all it can do is, in the freedom it has, to max it out. So it's like the appreciation of human life. That means if you're someone who has layers of suffering in your life, you actually have the potential to be a person with the greatest appreciation. Those who suffer seldom realize suffering is information acquisition. Anything that happens is information. We are a form, we are in a state of awareness, and as we change, the information in some sense re-identifies with the new self we inhabit or employ. I remember going to this marketplace, and you could see, like, it was fascinating, as we were walking through this long kind of ring market, stone and metal ring market. In Farsi they called it Angushtare Arghiq. Arghiq is a type of stone. So anyways, we go into this market. I remember seeing street smart people in the market. Some store owners, they would step out of their store and come in some sense, greet my father to try to, pull the customer into their own store, But I remember seeing sort of a street smart behaviorism there, and that street smart behaviorism left such an intense impression on me that when I came to the educational system, I actually employed subconscious techniques of street market salesman. And so what I mean is, I'll give you an example. Like, this is a bit of a messed up story, but it was something that I heard, and this was not in a market that I had seen in Iran. This was a story someone who was in a rug market had said, right? So in this rug market where it's like 100 stores each selling rugs in like a certain place in Iran, right? So what goes on is every store has like the store owner, has like the employee, and then they have an assistant, which is usually like some kid in poverty. It's in developing countries, this is really real. But anyways, so this is how the story goes, that there was this kid who was moving this carton of rugs, not rugs, but like moving this carton in this marketplace. This is a story about a person in Iran, right? And this kid gets bullied in some sense to a point where it's like a gang of like other kids in this marketplace gang up on this kid, right? And what he does is he does something crazy where he injures himself to scare the other people away, right? And the story was way more intense, but than I'm saying. But the whole idea was that the person employed a tactic which in some sense required the shift of the inner space of those around it, right? And so I think when a human being understands this relationship of the concept and the context, and to move on from this market metaphor, when a person understands this concept of this idea of the concept and the context, and the internal and the external, or if you want to be very technical about it, the exoteric and the esoteric. The esoteric is the essence-based, So what I'm trying to say is pretty much I got this influence, this inspiration, as if my eyes were in the moment and they saw the geometry of what had happened in the moment, right? And so the street smart angle was in some sense to clearly find out which reality the attention of the person is in, right? So what that means is when it comes to the outer realm, let's say there's a statue, or let's say everybody who's listening to this talk, there's a couple people right now, let's say everyone's listening is looking at the Mona Lisa on the wall in the Louvre in France, this giant art gallery. And so we are looking at that, and so if we look at the Louvre, in some sense, look at that painting, every person can see its value. Yeah, something's existing here, there's a painting here. But when it comes to trying to, like, this is what the street smart person, I feel, does that the other doesn't. You know, the street smart mentality. The street smart mentality is trying to quickly find out the destiny of the importance in the moment. That means, where is the importance? Where is the attention of reality? That means in my own education in this life, on my schooling and university, I would say that there was for a long time I had no clue what teachers were saying. It was only when I managed to, in my inner realms, construct a question that there was suddenly an interest to instantaneously understand. That means, imagine some people are learning knowledge in this world because someone is telling them to. Others are learning knowledge because they are asking a question that requires the most heightened perception. You know, it's like when you ask big questions, the world needs big changes. I feel street smart creatures are actually beings who they are understanding the macro context. That means, where is everything happening? And then they go discover the micro conceptions. Do you know? That means it's as if, imagine like being in a market and you have a store, and let's say you're selling, like, I don't know, rings or spices or whatever, right? And so you know that the context is, in some sense, people come into this area to buy spices. So when you see a customer, you know that customer wants something from the space. So the context is already verified. You know, the demand is kind of located. And then, in some sense, the store owner goes and communicates and asks the customer, hey, what are you looking for? What do you want? Do you know? And then it becomes clear. And it's honestly like this. It's like a proposition and then an experiential discovery that realigns the proposition. And this endlessly happens. Now, what has happened on our planet is that people, or I should say, unknown attention moving through known bodies, through known elements, is in some sense getting overwhelmed by the vastness. That means, do you know, if we wanted to give words to everything, knowledge will never end. That means kids have to stay in school till the end of time. Do you know? That means the educational system can be an infinite business. But it's only the utility of what we know, you know, that has a value. It's how much we can use what we know, which is the value of knowledge, you know. Because so many people go into the educational system, they get introduced to many sub-realities, and then at the end of the educational system, you know, they're happy, they're inspired, and they go towards their work. But what ends up happening is that the mind, like the cells of the body, the inner realm content changes. So what that means is, what I'm, like, all the concepts I'm sharing now in today's talk, probably from a year from now, I will have a totally different, you know, alignment of all of them. Anyways, the street smart person was accessing multidimensional behaviourism, in my view. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. That you notice something from more than one angle. Therefore, automatically, based on that information, you can do different things. You can do something others haven't. My strategy is pretty much, I notice that we are a creature, we are literally attention. That means I have such a, sometimes I look at, think about my own ideas and I'm like, really? When I realized life is not an idea, experience became significant. When we realize at the end of this life, the idea of you is not going to enter the unknown, the experience of you is going to enter the unknown. So to become experiential, to become acquainted with the mysteries of your experience are way more important than to become acquainted with the mystery of ideology. You know what it is? Language is like doing its own thing, but then there is like real life happening. The world doesn't have a shape, and that is the big truth for small eyes. What I mean by this is that because it's changing, how can it have a shape? So there is no true knowledge. There is just enough awareness to get by towards the next phase of the modes of existence. Sometimes a person's attention can run to the past and they can run to the future. And the funny thing is, at the end of the past and at the beginning of the past and at the end of the future, it is the same. That means this world is not that it's a dream like when we have a dream at night, but it's a dream in the sense that it has a beginning and ending. And all dreams have a beginning and ending. What that means is you enter scenery and then something happens and you wake up in your bed, like after a dream, You know what it is? It's as if like there is actually something like extra going on in the background of human intelligence, which can be attributed to the idea of the soul. Because when we dream, we are conscious inside of our mind. Consciousness has nothing to do with the body. When I say nothing to do, I got disconnected for a second. I said there's definitely information overload possible. I personally have experienced states where, so the way I explain my inner realms is that I say it's like a river. So I pretty much stop doing anything in the moment and I watch the moment. As I watch the moment without any effort, it's so effortless, it's so automated that just like our heart beats, ideas appear. And when you watch the ideas from their beginning to their end, you'll notice something unique, that as if we are a candle in the darkness and only what's in the candle range's awareness is being considered real. That means it's all a show. Reality is a show in the sense that what we are considering to be true is a simulation in truth. So we are simulating meaning, truth. Right now as I'm sitting here, I mean, honestly, what can the conscious creature do? Its eyes are open, it looks at something, and then it has memory, and then it looks at something else, and it connects the memory. The memory becomes the bridge between the two objects, right? The only way we talk about interdependence is because we see the relationship. We see how, for example, our biological body is dependent on the oxygen that the atmosphere provides, the safe zone that the atmosphere creates. Or for example, we need sunlight to even have the sight to even be able to consider reality. That means without light, what would there be? That means this is when philosophers are called into the scene, when there comes a question that neither the theistic mind or the atheistic mind can respond to about intelligence. Philosophers, to me, they are like the SWAT team of the ultimate. That means, I mean seriously, if aliens come in, land on Earth, philosophers should 100% be there to meet the alien, right? Because if we limit the reality of the extraterrestrial in accordance to us, then we have terrestrialized our expectation of the unknown, which is a fallacy, which is an error, which is a mistake, There's a show which is called Vinland Saga, and it's this Japanese comic book made into a show, and there is a very complex relationship in it between the characters. There's this one ultimate, OP character named Thor's, and it's like this Viking, Japanese interpretation of, Viking fiction. And in this show, what happens is there's a scene where this great warrior has killed many people in battle, has defeated, has been in many successful wars, victories to himself, right? But then he suddenly realizes what it means to be a true warrior. And the whole story is a tribute to what Sun Tzu says, where he says, the great warrior, the epic warrior, defeats the opponent without moving his sword. What that means is it's like some victories are just perception change. So in this show, this character talks about what is the true warrior. And the true warrior is not the warrior who has the biggest stick and is like shouting and hitting everyone, where our society thinks, yeah, alpha's good, Really what it is it's like intelligence is good, whatever way it animates, whether intense or gentle. It's just if the intelligence is there. It's all about awareness in this life, right? We lived in an era of objecthood where it was force and strength, and yeah, man, my power is greater than yours, and my kingdom will rule your kingdom. There was that kind of mentality, right? But then we went towards global opportunity. So it's like history, the tides of history are changing in the sense where as we go towards the future and the challenges and the obstacles of the species kind of become more evident, more and more there is a reason to cultivate a global gentleness so the greatest strategies can come forth. That means it's as if imagine there's a bunch of soldiers, a commanding officer, and a general, inside a tent, right? And intentionally the general wants some of the soldiers to also be in the general's tent. And so the general, imagine, is explaining the strategy, and suddenly the soldiers begin talking among themselves, or the commanding officers begin talking among themselves, and in some sense it's as if I totally understand why Lao Tzu says action through inaction is the ultimate. That means we are going towards the era of collective identity. The true warrior does not destroy, but understands the value of creation. You know, can you imagine the strongest people on the planet not being the violent, not being the exoterically powerful? You know, I would say the most strongest beings on this planet are those who have dared to care for the future before they stop being in this plane of existence. You know, it's kind of like a temporary mindset is causing the whole species to hallucinate greed as the best strategy, but it is not. You know, the best strategy is a well-equipped humanity, where in the inner realms we have technologies that assist us, and in the outer realms we have technologies that assist us. And currently, the dog is like man's best friend, but I will tell you, in the future, AI will become man's best friend. That means it's as if it's in regards to just humanized animation. You know, I remember, I can't tell you how many TV shows I've seen where the person is stranded with a robot and the person treats the robot like another human being, right? So the mind, if it just gets enough imagery to create an appearance, it humanizes it, it personifies it. You know, people can see an object be given a personality, or they can see a person be an object. You know, both are ways of view. We have been experientially learning. There's nothing like, everybody is experientially learning. It's just that the content of their experience there is in their unconscious. And if they expand their consciousness, people will realize they know so much more than they can actually think. You know, who thought that beyond language we are the simple moment? That means sometimes when I have a relationship with my own intelligence beyond time, it is literally as if all my knowledge is in one moment. So, thank you, Michael C. We have a new project supporter. That's epic. You know, just a comment on what will happen. So, I'm a person who I entertain strategies. What I mean is I have a lot of projects that I see possible, but my attempt and effort to them, it's like the time is limited. Pretty much the effort of this channel and all the support that it gets is going towards trying to establish as quick as possible and as instantly, you know, a network of advanced communicators where this global movement begins to happen, where everybody in their environment or their community, now of course we have Corona, but there's also like, you know, responses to Corona in regards to apps such as like Clubhouse and Green Room and whatever, so people can still communicate even though physically they can't be there with one another, you know what I mean? But in some sense people can communicate, and what needs to happen is new moments where communication and conversation becomes explorative. That means people start talking on this planet to each other in ways where the conversations they're having have never happened before, as if in the middle of the conversation the person suddenly occurs to them, could I be, one of the few who is having this view on this reality, It's all about sharing inner realms. Eventually a renaissance will take place, an antenna renaissance, Here's the view. It's like some people have this mentality that the coolest option is to be powerful. Like a lot of celebrity archetypes we see in media, they are in some sense showing off their worth, and they are belittling others, because a strategy to make yourself valuable is to make others less. That means if you make the people around you less, you may come across as very valuable. But that's not the cool approach. The cool approach is to see the ultimatum. That means it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're a chef. It doesn't matter if you are a interstellar pilot. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you are in some sense whatever. It's just in every moment, whatever intelligence is accessible activates towards the ultimate. That's it. That's the algorithm that needs to take place in communication globally. And somebody, I forget who the person was, but I was driving and there's this app called Clubhouse, which I was mentioning earlier. This app, there was this lady talking in one of the rooms. I don't even know what room it was. It was like I was driving and I just clicked the room, and while I was driving, I was listening. This lady suddenly, how sometimes you listen to something and it's as if you feel you were meant to hear it? So I'm listening, and this lady in Clubhouse is talking about authenticity, in the sense that anytime a person has not been authentic, they have done a disservice. Just take this in. Anytime a person is not sincere, they have done a disservice to others, to all those people who had to hear them as them. Right? So there is always an opportunity cost, not in economics only, but also in human psychology, right? Where our belief in a certain mode or a certain way to look at things makes us forget of all the other ways there are, right? And the species has to come to terms with infinity. That is just the most intense thing, right? That means duality, suffering and becoming enlightened. Sure, I get that. That has its own allure. But infinity, what do we do with the infinity in the room? That means emptiness. Yeah, we got it. We can't see the edge of the system. But the system that is present now has infinite potential. Not only in the sense of, for example, how would I say? Not only in the sense of mathematics, right, where a sort of division of phenomena and then a re-equating of its value, because really existence is one singular event, right? It can be seen that way. So in order to have numerology, we had to divide things, right? So we can say the psychology is, believe it or not, numeric based. That means before we had languages, we had to have the language of mathematics. That means honestly, mathematics is a more ancient language than, how we speak in our current modernity. Because we had to have the concept of two. We had to have arithmetic. We had to have this a view that there is a space between two words. That means, think of it this way: it's like if language it begins from the understanding of one word and then another word. So more than one word, you have sort of two designs to kind of like a caveman, hit these ideas together to spark fire. Experiential learning means you are being your whole moment. Sometimes I am astonished. Let me tell you the relationship I have with my own physical body. Sometimes some meditative states where I've perceived my own intelligence. So right now in front of me there's this computer, this laptop, and my hand is on the laptop right now. Okay, so right now, if I was to give try to review, like, okay, what's happening in this moment, I would say, right, it's like a spherical awareness, and in this spherical awareness there is an object that is not me, and there is an object that is me, and that object that is me is having an interaction with the laptop, like holding the laptop, touching the laptop, in the sense that it's like having an interaction with something that is from me and not of me. Now here's the unique thing: when I touch the table or this laptop, I get the sensation of touching an object. Now if people can try this right now with your right fingertip, touch your left hand. Just touch your left hand and tell me what is the sensation-based difference from touching an object like a laptop and touching your hand. When it comes to the sensation, they are both objects, right? So what it is that the awareness in the moment has an ability to identify as all matter in the moment. What this means is, while we have not just been, our little old selves, we have not been our just individualism. We have been actually the whole moment, and now the individualism, as the conscious has a relationship with the unconscious. What is the greatest thing that can happen? What is the best outcome of exploration? We see what was there. And this is where I would say exploration is the only meaning of life when you are a mind. And when I talk about advancing communication, advancing civilization, it's all to increase the ability of how a human being looks at this world and realizes not only are they animating it through their intelligence, but as they animate it, eventually meaning has to be extracted. That means it's like a person can say, I don't believe in anything, but then as they live in life, eventually they will have to tunnel through ideology. And let me tell you what kind of society we've built. We've built a society, and I find this is common in all societies, where if you ask a person, are you a good person or a bad person, the person can never be honest. So this is the disadvantage of a dishonest society. It misses out on all that it has. People make the concept of honesty too complex. They make it so complex that through a religious, contextual framework, it's as if the mistake of one moment makes all the value of other moments in life meaningless, and that is in some sense not the right way, The whole issue of suffering is that we have accepted an image as ourselves, when in actuality it's just a changing universe. That means right now, honestly, if I am truly staying true to my philosophical vision, I can't tell you if I am, Amin Jawar Ansari, a person, with this online alias talking, or I am the whole universe happening right now, beyond my name, beyond my face, and all of that. So in the chat section, there's a question. Michael C. says, is it helpful to plan our experience? For example, set intentions for the day, or is the experience whole as it is and the appropriate action will happen regardless? If the appropriate action would happen regardless, that means you have no free will. That means there is no purpose to the free will. right? So that is like, even though a person may get rid of the suffering of their past by going through a state of feeling everything is oneness, right? Like, I philosophically entertain it, but it's like when you realize the ocean is just the ocean, then the experience of the drop doesn't become frightening. Your free will becomes like an Iron Man suit that only like for like 100 years you have access to. Do you know? So what it is detaching our emotions from images that can be independent of our emotions. But here's I'll give you just how I approach it. First of all, there's 8 billion human beings. There is no saying that there's like one person cannot tell 8 billion human beings how to be, because that's not possible. And the idea is that we don't want a world of like successful clones where everybody's just the same. We want the differences that we all have maximized in their own, like, you know what it is? It's like the person, instead of sacrificing their ego, they in some sense respectfully integrated it. You know? So I would say I treat myself when I wake up as an antenna. There was a time where every day I was like, all right, you know, I'm gonna dress up in this ideology and live the day, you know, with this intent, with this personal animation of character, right? But then it gets boring. So when something repeats after a while, you try to see something more. Now, how do you see something more in regards to from the moment you wake up, right? So I would share something here that could also integrate with what I'm saying in the talk, Michael, in the chat section. Like, so here's the thing. In the Ribu Gita, it says there's 3 states: the conscious waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. The Ribu Gita then says there's a 4th state which is aware of all these 3 simultaneously. So there is a state from the yogic from the Vedic angle, that in some sense a person can be ultimate in all moments, as if it's like we're experiencing going through a cycle of 3 types of dimensions, but you can see these 3 dimensions as if 3 lines that connect to the same point, right? So through a yogic understanding, if you are trying to advance your inner realms, be the God called now, you know. You know, if you want. But if we want to advance the outer realms, it's not about getting rid of the individualism to have liberty. It is utilizing the life force. So what it is when you wake up, like, even the view is like, why am I here? And then that from that question, why am I here, the person realizes the opportunity to individualize. That means there's a reason right now I am embodied. You know, I could have totally been animated beyond this body. Do you know, when you understand the mind's unconditionality, you know, the intelligence is unconditionality. That means consciousness is conditional, awareness is unconditional, right? So when you discover that in every moment of your life has been like an awareness in one moment, literally, right? That means time is our own, you know, face paint, you know. There is something to be done here, or we would not be animate. This means I would say I'm making the answer too complex here. So Michael, as a final answer to what you've shared, I'll say this. I wake up and I realize I'm aware of the moment. So my first relationship when I wake up with the day is to notice the whole moment, as if the edge of the sphere. When you notice this, your reflexes heighten ridiculously. When you just wake up and try to look around as if you were in a room, and from that room you're trying to perceive more, right? You're trying to see the edges of the room of your mind, believe it or not, right? So that's our awareness, through our sensory perception as well. So, and then I, in some sense, I would say, rather than having an intention like a robot, as if you programmed yourself like a robot, I mean, that's not wrong. See, there is no right or wrong, right? It's as if it's just like, how does the artist want to draw the artwork, really, right? But I'm saying it's like when you play, when the day feels like a chess game with the world, you let the world move first, you let information move, and then you take shape and move, right? So I would say it doesn't make sense really to only have one view on about the day, unless you're doing one task. Let's say you're a person who's like, all right, I'm gonna write the skeletal structure of a book in one day, right? Like the chapter outlines and the map of the book, right? Let's say that's one thing. You can for the whole day have the intention like, all right, I'm gonna be like the next great writer, da 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 da. Like you can program yourself, but the point is, when you are honest, you don't need to have a psychology overlay. That's the whole point, right? That means we follow the program, not being ignorant of our survival in this world, our outer realm survival, but the inner realms do not try to interfere. So that means it's like a subject doesn't tell an object what to do, but the object, realizes it is being seen as a subject from a subjective angle. Like the mind has to be in the room before the body can do anything. Awareness is like inner space, and so what I'm saying is, just be like be natural. Look at how the birds and the animals in nature behave. The birds and animals in nature, they don't obsess. They fight. They might fight obsessively in a survival dilemma, but they don't obsess. They just go. If you look at a bird, like I've given so many talks outside that I've seen, like I can't tell you how I've observed the bird psychology in a ridiculous way, like a couple hundred times, just midway giving a talk and my attention's just gone on to a bird. And when you see, for example, a sparrow, the head of the sparrow moves like a ridiculous scanner. Like, birds are ridiculous creatures. They're, what they're doing? They're having like imagine a samurai slashing his sword in the battlefield from different angles. Like the bird is with its attention scanning its environment, and its reflexes are so fast, And so what it is the bird abides by its nature, but also utilizes the mind's greater, domain of consciousness to update the strategy, right? So what it is we gotta still live like animals, but we can't behave like animals anymore, right? And the evolution beyond behaving more than an animal is to be a conscious moment, right? But many people think that has to be an image-based condition. That means they think truth is gonna hug them, truth is gonna find them. It's not, I wouldn't say it's not that truth doesn't, it's not that like they say, take a step towards God and God takes a step towards you. Like there's this idea. It's not that, man. All I'm saying is we are an antenna. When you understand what kind of antenna you are, you can reanimate the day. In some sense, doing new things is like evolution. So if 8 billion human beings lived lives wherein whatever they were doing, even though it could be in a repetitive cyclical system, they approach it in a new way. As if, can you imagine, as if every moment, it was as if that was the moment you arrived into the scene. That was the moment where you arrived into consciousness. There would be no impression. So imagine when your mind, when the outer realms can no longer change your mind, right? Your mind will rely on its own independence to update, right? So it's the express. So think of it this way, Michael. You have not come into this life to just know others and have like, intentions for the outer realms. You have come into this life to also see what you are. So if the day becomes a day where you see more to life than you saw yesterday, I mean, it's like, it's like that's what the intention is trying to get to, right? And I'm not talking about building things. If you want to build something specific, then yeah, you got to set the intention, but if you want to talk about it in the sense of how, in what state should character be, that's preference based. For example, for me personally, I am not a thought throughout the day, so I don't even have this view of duality becomes boring. When duality becomes boring, what happens is, in any dualistic system, you just try to wonder about its infinite edge, like how far can the good go, how far can the bad go, and eventually they reach infinite. It's like a mountain, right, where the bottom of the mountain is zero and the top of the mountain is infinity, right? And the species is crossing over from the singular to the dual, and is now crossing from the dual to the infinite. I would say live life as if you're an explorer back in the day, and there's a mysterious world when you wake up, and the whole aim of human civilization is to advance its relationship with the mysteries of reality, which are so large in scale that they are inevitable to be understood. That means it doesn't matter what story of knowledge we tell ourselves, there is no way the scientific vision can calculate and index all universal phenomenology. That means we don't even know if the universe is an object, right? We know that there's objects in the universe, but we don't know the edge of the universe. You know what? It's as if realizing the edge of the universe is the mind of a higher dimension dreaming. So I would say, don't forget, because you're in this life once, pilot and explore the realm. And when you explore the realm, if you have a relationship with nature, you got to pay attention to signs throughout the day. I am telling you, it's not like the logos communicates through casual conversation over a cup of tea. You know what I mean? Like, the logos gives you is intelligent activity, and if you notice it, you can have a relationship with it. Right? That means if there is something in the room beyond the human framework, if we can't notice it, how can we have any sort of relationship with it, right? So it's as if you as a human being having a relationship with a living earth, and this is truly the shamanic wisdom. And what tends to happen is, if the person is honest when they enter the unknown, they will have honest karma. And when I say honest karma, that means if they simply enter a complex system, they will also be able to simply exit it. But if they enter in a complex way, their exiting has to be complex, right? Some people don't notice this, but in human psychology, even in human beings, that they go through psychosis or a sort of neurosis. Neurosis is, has to do with, of course, the brain's being prioritized, the neurochemistry being prioritized. But I would say psychosis is when an idea that is uncommon to the common senses appears. A state of mind appears. And a lot of, here I've written, what is it? Multidimensional behaviorism. Multidimensional behaviorism means multiple selves in one moment. And so it's like this weird thing where the person's like, wait a minute, when I remember my past, and which self am I being? Am I the self from the past, or am I the self right now? So by nature, we are multidimensional. This idea that the human being is just one thing is flawed, alongside, even aside from macro conceptions of like universals such as endless change. So we are going towards that. Like, the signs of it are here, The signs of multidimensional psychology is everywhere around us. We find it in the shadows of civilization, in parts of the world where there is poverty, and because there is poverty, that means the person has nothing to lose. So it's like a free authorization for extreme chaos, but at the same time extreme good. Do you know? So it's like we have to we have to go forth as a species in a way where we have something to lose, but if we lose it, we technically have lost nothing, in nothing. I have spoken to people. There was a party I went to, this is years ago, and the host of the party suddenly stops everyone at the party and just says this thing, and he tells people he has multiple personalities. Can you imagine going to like this house party and the host suddenly saying like he has multiple personalities, and then I asked the person if he had an experience of like the idea of the soul or something, or what he felt the intelligence was, and the person's like, yeah, I got a soul. And then I asked them, do each of your personalities have their own soul, or is it one soul that is being all the personalities? And I remember it was a moment where I realized that multidimensionality may be in the future misused just because it may be the more comfortable thing to do. There's a reason people lie in reality, because ignorance hides. So we have to have, it's like one of the most complex problems, honestly, when I think about how to build an advanced civilization. If that was a puzzle, like what would be the solution to it? And the solution would be every human being, regardless of whatever story they're telling themselves, for a moment they step out of their personal linguistic simulation and notice a world that is purely elemental in emptiness. When we realize emptiness, we're like, oh my God, emptiness is at the edge of our lawn. Imagine, in Sky Cities, this may be a sign. 8 billion human beings have to step out of their inner realms, come to a neutral outer realms, then from the neutral outer realms, through honest expression of whatever kind of intelligence you are here. When I say honest, that means the simplest way you can be before an ideal possesses your future. I am telling you, this world is alive. And it's not just us that is alive. And the relationship we can have with the life of not just the planet, but the universal sector. What if intelligence is like speakers at the edge of the universe, and the host of the party has raised the volume, and the whole universe is hearing signals of consciousness everywhere? What if the sun is a broadcasting mechanism? So I have this theory also that through light beams there is geometric coding that is causing potentially intelligent particles to animate as into consciousness. So what it is like seeds were thrown into matter, and when light hits they sprout, right? And so these seeds are not only physical, and they're not only ideological, they are momentum. That means when I tell you, the secret of life is in your attention, that's where the world is starting. By the way, questions of all sorts are welcomed. Members, of course, are prioritized. there was an experience that it's like, imagine sitting on a balcony, at a table on a balcony, on your porch, let's say, and a bird lands on the, let's say, a side of the fence of the porch, and the bird just stays there for a long time with something in its mouth, like, a twig or something, and the person's like, oh my god, is this the divine, is this the sign from nature, and then the person realizes the house of the bird was behind them, for example, right? So the interpretation of divinity, when I say interpret your signs, I mean be observant of how your inner realms, like a chemical, and the outer realms, like a chemical, are causing the psychology to be a chemical reaction. If a person in the outer realms is pressured too much, the psychology goes into a breaking point. When the psychology goes into a breaking point, that is defeat. If it not that it is defeat, it is that when the person is broken, their failure is like the freshest memory, their identity is referentially becoming based from. So unless the person has a comprehension beyond images, everything can cause you to suffer. So we are experiencing an era where even social media is fragmenting our psychologies. We can't, this is totally, like, this has to be said, that people have a cyber self now. They have a digital self, and that digital self, its authenticity can be manipulated. Like, how many filters are there in Instagram? You know what I mean? That's literally like all the ways authenticity can be manipulated. Filtered by sociological fear to be unauthentic, because in life intelligent events happen, and what can we do? We respond to them. I'll tell you, like in 2000, I think it was 2014, right, the first year where I started giving these talks, and I was in UK, Birmingham, and I remember early in the morning I was walking to go to the ATM, and as I'm walking, I see like the wind had broken this giant wooden sign. Like, it was kind of stupid when I thought about it. I'm like, the construction company has a wooden sign that can break by the wind, like how unprofessional. But this giant wooden sign had broken, and it had fallen right at the edge of an intersection where people had to cross, and at the same time a car could turn and hit it, right? And I remember it was early in the morning and there was no one there, and it was this weird moment where I was in the street alone, and this broken sign was on the street, and there was no cars, nothing, and for a moment it was like a sign for me. I'm like, okay, and I pulled the sign out to the sidewalk and just put it there, The sign wasn't that big to like destroy a car, but it would definitely damage any car that would accidentally turn to hit it. You know what I mean? Plus, it was blocking the sidewalk too, like a bit of a sidewalk. But anyways, I'm saying that was like, for me, there was no intention to be a good or bad person. There was nothing. I was just a person going to the ATM, in the morning, and suddenly I saw something, and it changed my inner realms. And then internally, as if there was a, conscience taps you on the shoulder, and it's like, hey, help out, and so your intelligence goes forth into the moment, in previous talks, I said a statement that questions open worlds, and answers close them. When we get an answer, we're going towards the singular. The person's like having a conversation, a debate with someone, and the person in the middle of the conversation says, answer me, tell me the truth, answer me. And what that means is singularize all your views on reality. So pretty much, we are multidimensional beings. We should just be conscious also that that's 1/4 of reality. The healthiest multidimensional perception is not parallel universes or would say, or a sort of kind of world hierarchy, higher world hierarchies, like afterlife or whatever. The best is to see, like, if we are in an elemental Iron Man suit and we're also inside an ideological Iron Man suit, and if both the elemental and ideological Iron Man suit are in the unknown witnesses, containment, then in some sense, like, what can life doesn't have to be anything, but it can be anything. Do you know what I mean? And people, they're rude to philosophers in public. I don't get it. Philosophy is like philosophers nowadays, they're like, I think they are shackled by by an absolute objectivism, in their thinking. So right now in 2021, the continental philosophers are like the small rebel group, and in some sense the analytical philosophers are like, the empire. Anyways, we have to be able to be content as human beings to respond to emptiness. We have to be able to be individuals. That's just a privilege of being a human being. You can be an individual. There's freedom of individuals. So many not just philosophers, important people in history have talked about liberty, the freedom of the individual. Even nations and their ideals, some of them have, are still trying to reach for universal freedom. So Michael says, did you notice that experience as it happened or later upon investigation of the event? I'm not sure which experience you're referring to. I was just talking past. If you're talking about the sign that fell on the sidewalk, the sign that fell on the sidewalk. So what it was no. It was literally like me, just like when you drive a car, like, do you have a crazy intention? No, you just know where you're going, right? So I had that kind of view. I was going to the ATM, and then when I saw the sign was like information, like a satellite that had entered my universe, and it could not be ignored when it was transforming everything. Because the simpler your view on life is, the more content you can see. The more complex or specified your belief system in life is, the less you can see, believe it or not. That means it's hilarious. The more we think we know, the less we're actually seeing, and the more we see, the less reason there is for there to be thoughts, because direct experience doesn't need to be tuned, doesn't need to be dual. That's the value of direct experience. It doesn't have to be a thought, And when a person sets an intention, you lock yourself to a thought. And it's not that you shouldn't have thoughts, but I would say we should treat it like an antenna, where every moment the person's intelligence can reanimate, So the thing is, Michael, I would say just try this. Try this, where instead of trying to see what intention to set from the day, one day, don't set any intentions and experience one day of life. How does that look like if you have no intentions? And then experience one day of life, where you fill up the day with all intentions. And then you will have a spectrum of your own experience to guide you. Don F in the chat section says, what is your definition of freedom? What is my definition specifically? So my definition is, freedom is, first of all, I perceive we're in two dimensions simultaneously. I call them the inner outer. Freedom in the outer realms is, I have concluded, an advanced civilization. We pretty much create such an incredible backup system that our species can never fail, and we appreciate our biological intelligence in nature through a very efficient, collective movement of the species. Right, so that's freedom in the outer realms, and advanced civilization is the greatest idea on this planet, in the outer realms. In the inner realms, I would say freedom means unconditional being, not unconditional an identity of the unconditional. So Don, I would say my definition of freedom is that behind your eyes it is universal remembrance, in front of your eyes it is universal expression. We are a creature designed to express. Why do you think I'm giving this podcast right now? You know, people think it's not just like I want to give a podcast. The human animal is explorative by nature because meaning is what it engages with, right? Kind of like the picture of the paint is limited to the paint you select, I would say, in regards to the title, if you are asking me what is my definition of freedom, I would say multidimensional tolerance. What that means is human beings right now, let's say person A and person B, they communicate with each other. What happens? Person A thinks person A is a certain person, person B thinks person B is a certain person, not realizing that we are ever-changing eyes of the realm. Right? So what it is we're gonna go towards a stage where you gotta see every person has deeper dimensions to them, right? And how we communicate evokes it, evokes reality into the moment. That means we can pilot our attention to the noumenon or the qualia or the inner event that is going on while we're being a physical phenomenon, while the outer event is happening. And I would say even this goes close to what the yogis were saying as well, where they say freedom is a state that is, in some sense, it's like you're done with beginnings and endings. When you're done with that, the intelligence becomes unconditional because it has no choice. In emptiness, you are already free. In oneness, you're already free. In infinity, you're infinitely free. It's only in the dualistic perception where freedom is required. And if we build an advanced civilization, outer freedom, like an Xbox achievement, is unlocked. In the inner realms, if we create a society where instead of people hating on their egos, thinking that's the way to transformation, to get rid of something that nature naturally is there, rather it is to, in some sense, see that if all the information of your life has been your shape so far, the change of information changes one's shape. That means, in some sense, the inner realms is like a film that is happening so quickly, and sometimes you see a part of the film halfway, then bam, it changes instantly to another film, another memory comes, It's as if memories are fighting for the present attention of the present. And ultimately, it's like, I also use this analogy, guys, where I say every person is like their DNA, because it's unique. In a micro level of consideration, everybody is like a unique instrument. How you live your life is like how a musician plays the instrument, right? So if you live your day as if you are, in some sense, your life has become like creating music. There is so much more than language here. So human beings should not fear language, and advancement becomes automatic. More questions in the chat section. Welcome if people have questions. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the title, and then I think I'll end the talk, and I'll be on Discord for a little bit for those interested. Anyways, in the description of this talk, I've also shared a quote from Mahatma Ghandi. The future depends on what we do in the present, right? So our understanding of our inner realms is to some degree limited to the present. That's why I say in any sort of meditation or psychedelic exploration of anything where the person is going into a deep sort of self-inquiry, we have have to have the humanized dimension as headquarters. That means it's like the first save, like imagine life as a video game, and I'm saying before we go dwelling in the territory of this video game, we need to have a checkpoint. So the first checkpoint where I perceive it as the human headquarters. So you are human first, then the inner realm is allowing possibility of other, right? And when we have a sort of multidimensional behaviorism era, like that means the behavior of people begin, like right now we're behaving as if we're one thing, pretty much one person, right? But in the future we may start behaving as if we are space. And that would be like a complete transformation in culture. What that means is, like, anytime there, you know what it is? I don't know how it would look like because the system is too big for one person to even be able to contain it in idea. But I'll tell you, but I'll tell you, like, I see pretty much patience as a theme in human history. Multidimensional context emerging, that being something that will happen. Then individualism is going to become advanced there, and then it's going to become spectrumized. What that means is when new behavior happens, we have to have a way to connect it, to understand it in accordance to the past. So that means we need a lot of people exploring not just the outer realms but the inner realms and sharing. Do you know what I mean? There's so many experiences that nobody has invented words for because nobody has had. Nobody, like, every person is a rare access to an individual human. That is like mind-blowing. It's like the person wakes up, it's like, no way. So I'm this awareness that has access to this genetical pattern that has echoed on since ancient times, in some sense being an archaic revival just by design. And I think the healthiest approach is there is no hierarchy of better or worse people. There's no such thing. It was a fiction from the beginning. It's like, what else can a rock in the middle of nowhere do? Now, it's like once we see the empty page, what do we write on it? Right? So it's as if like 8 billion human beings, how they live life, they are literally, if it was translated into history, their life is a sentence. Everything has a meaning if there is intelligence looking at it. So many people don't realize before even children go to school, they have to be kind of positioned in accordance to their own psyche. And usually children automatically do this. Like Jacques Lacan, he says, like, you look in the mirror, you see the child looks in the mirror, and the moment the child notices the reflection in the mirror is itself, all its fear of the reflection being the other, being another, being an unknown force goes away. So the moment you understand life is your own reflection, your fear of what you see in the mirror of life goes away. I'm not kidding, this is so true. And that's why they say confront the fear. Whenever fear comes, like as if you attack that first. And what I mean what I mean by that is that it's not like there is no outer realm fear. Like if the time traveler accidentally messed up and a dinosaur was released in like our timeline, You know, like I would have outer realm fear, but when it comes to inner realm fear, the inner realm can't be afraid, again, because it's not an object. So when you realize you can't treat your mind like an object, true spirituality begins. And we should not fear the multidimensional. It's 1/4 of the civilization's responsibility. That means any human being that is conscious, any human being that is animated in human reality, they have to discriminate between their inner or outer realm, or they will have a confusion of both of them. And what that means is this is what we see in the state of psychosis, right? Where the human being's inner realm has dominated their outer realms. And for example, we see examples of this in history, all the cruel dictators in history, right? Hitler, he was a person where his inner realm dominated his outer realm, right? And his strategy was that he blamed something that united, evil, an evil intent, I should say, right? Because domination, it means freedom has rejected you. All those people who want to viciously attain something, they have been rejected by, as Papaji said in one of his lectures, he said it's as if they are rejected by the divine and they don't know what to do, and so their psychology goes ballistic, right? And so the human psychology, it's literally like a sword, and with a hammer, each time you hit the sword, you're straightening it out, right? It's not like in one moment a person can in some sense become balanced. It's as if literally you're a blacksmith of your own mind, And so what happens, what is that hammer stroke each time hitting the sword to straighten it out? That is consciousness. And those who they become conscious of their breathing throughout their day, their inner realm speed becomes incredibly fast, right? Because with each inhale, exhale, like water on a sand shore, like on a beach, like, every idea, even I'm saying now, with every inhale and exhale of my biological system, I have to constantly reconcentrate on it, So there is something, just discovering that you are attention and discovering that you are form. Like literally we're a life form. The life is like the mind and the form is the body. Can you imagine in the future, there's a type of information called life formation, This concept of us being thoughts and having thoughts, it's outdated. Who are we kidding? It's outdated. And this concept of time being just stuck in past, present, future modality of being understood, that's ridiculous. Do you know that means? It's as if like so many people could have perceived beyond time and had their intelligence activate beyond time, but time shackled them to ideological, sort of being like a statue of their ideals, right? And when I say advanced communicators, guys, I don't know if people are really appreciating what I mean by this. When I say an advanced communicator, I define it as the advanced communicators, the most advanced communication of the universal sector. That means we are not a thought. We are just the most intelligent event taking place. And like the wings of a bird, our inner realms, outer realms, aligned, symmetrically aligned, and beyond the hidden desire for truth, man flies into the unknown sky. And as Rabindranath Tagore says, faith is the bird that feels the sun on its wings before dawn, right? That means before the sun comes, the bird is flying in the darkness, unknown sky, and it's just faith is its only destination. faith in the intelligence that not that there is only something here, but this something here is within the universal sector. That means it's not pantheism in a sense, or you could say it's a rare type of pantheism, this universe, where because it is in one moment, it doesn't need eyes to see everything. It is everything. Our mind's life is very important, And how many people do you know who are living their mind's life? How many people even know what the mind is, Even the educational system is like telling kids to be quiet, but if the quiet's like, who are you telling to be quiet to? Like, who are you telling to be quiet? And the teacher would be like, that's an existential question that nobody knows the answer to, because that really it's like the philosophically unknown variables in the system. In mathematics, we have the unknown x variable, and when it comes to looking at life, there is unknown variables, and based on what value they are given, or just life goes forward, then their value appears. It's like reality is not something per se to be attached to or detached from. It is something that's happening, and we are walking alongside it, as if you are walking inside, poetically, the mind of God right now. Or if you were, from the ancient Indian tradition, inclined towards that, it was as if like, I think it was, I could be getting this wrong, but it was like Krishna's dream was like something like 54 million years, or like some number that large of like how many days on earth is going by, right? So truth timelessly is being, but man's ideological search for this reward of a truth is not singular, is dual. So the truth of duality is only balance. That's the truth of duality. Balance. That means if somebody says, what is the truth to walking? What is the secret to walking? Enlightened guru, and the guru's like, just walk, bro. Like that's it. That's the secret. You live as you are living. The life of the moment is here. That means if you consider a truth has to be here to be known. So it's like, instead of the person going towards truth, that doesn't make sense. If truth is here, it has to be here right now. It has to be here instantly. Do you know? And that's what many mystical seekers or spiritual seekers don't realize, and they get pulled into language simulations, where they think they have to culturally change to become enlightened. No. It's just realizing an object, a subject that thought it was an object, was actually just a space. We are literally like space is like our soul. That's like the dimension of the soul. Like I'm kind of like, the words are shaky right now. What I'm trying to say is like, there is unknown. Think of it this way. This is the simplest way to say it beyond any, philosophy. There is an unknown moment, there is a known moment, and there is a moment where the unknown and the known are being seen at the same time. Right? So I'm pretty much saying body, mind, soul, this applies to the universal sector. Right? There is a level of just known physicality. There is a level of unknown, in some sense, non-physicality, where we don't even know again what the edge of the realm is. We really don't know what we are. I mean, people can have addresses, mailing addresses, but really we're in the middle of nowhere. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. And thanks to all those who are supporting this project. Hopefully I can pilot it toward Civ 2.0. The best thing about the future is that it can be anything. It is total freedom. And some people feel the future gives them anxiety. It is the only place where strategy can be prepared to be implemented. That means reality is like we're an antenna, and everything that happens around us is like a wave. This wave hits us. The moment this wave hits us, how we work, how the realm was constituted in accordance to our past shakes, as if a rock is thrown into a pond. Your moment is the only truth, because your moment is the only thing that has been with you from the beginning, and what will be with you till the end. That means life is a happening, and it's so simple. And if the outer realms, as the Buddha looked at an object and saw the emptiness of the nature of an object, our minds are life givers. They are world generators. They are what is keeping intelligence alive in this universal sector. It's as if we are honored by the unknown. We don't realize it, internally. You know what it is? It's like we're at a species in civil war, but it's a contextual universal civil war. Where two types where past and the future are kind of like breaking the species, making it become an animal to itself, in spaces of the mind where this should never happen. That means a person's animalistic instincts, they should only be activated at the extremes of survival, right? So the mind, because then it's a testament to a weak mind. That means if you have to be physical, that means the non-physical has not been successful. The mind couldn't solve the problem before the body acted, right? And so multidimensional context will just change us. There is so much freedom here, right? But when we define freedom, we lose sight of the true freedom. So freedom is the ever-changing, dynamic forces of nature in one conscious moment. That means our minds are the poetry of the universe, of emptiness. Existence, that's why existence is so poetic. Because if it wasn't here, we wouldn't know what else would be here. The edge of the realm, beyond the language threshold, the species, not all people can. Everybody has the potential, but to go beyond the language threshold means to be a human being that experiences a moment where there is no thought. And when I say there is no thought, not that there's no thought, the direct experience of the moment goes beyond what language can portray, convey, or capture. Language doesn't have the strength to hold certain multidimensional experiences, right? So the way we access them is experientially only. Like direct experience is a greater teacher than any sort of ideological banner in, the battlefield of time. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I'll be on Discord for a little bit for those interested. So